Welcome back to the Cybersecurity Reference Architecture Microsoft Virtual Academy. This module, we're going to be talking about threat detection. So when we take a look at what you need to do to be successful in a threat detection world, there's a great concept that came out of the U.S. military, the U.S. Air Force. Colonel John Boyd coined this terminology. It's the OODA, or commonly referred to as the OODA loop. So when we look at this from an attacker's perspective, the attacker has to be able to conduct operations and make decisions and operate within your environment. And it takes them a while to go through this observe, orient, decide, act. They have to see what's going on. They have to be able to understand what's going on and what their options are. They have to make a decision on which option they're going to take. And then, of course, they have to act on that decision. And that's that full decision-making loop, the attacker OODA loop. And when we take a look at this from the defender's perspective, your objective is to get inside that loop. You've got to operate your decision-making process, your response process is faster than the adversary is making their attack operation happen. And so it's a pure defense-offense thing, whereas in a fighter combat situation, you're both attacking and defending at the same time. But you're on a pure defense perspective, your job is to figure out what the attacker's doing and stop them before they get a chance to do it, or ideally even before they get a chance to decide what they're doing. Unfortunately, right now, in a lot of organizations, we're dealing with our response loop happens after the fact, sometimes months, sometimes years after the fact, but we're responding well after the attacker has conducted their operation. And so what our reasonable objective is to get just in time. We want to get to the point where we're able to understand what the attackers are doing, understand what they're trying to do, and be able to head them off before they're able to act. And that's sort of a just-in-time state of getting your OODA loop run, your defense processes run.
So you're talking about how do we go from detection to disruption?
Exactly. And all of the things that it does, it creates a deterrence effect because, you know what, if I'm being frustrated every time I get in there and they're ahead of me, every step I take, I don't want to attack them. I'm going to go somewhere else to make my money if I can.
It's also raising the cost for the attackers.
Exactly, because it costs me more to deal with the defender that keeps anticipating me and keeps heading me off. It makes it so much more expensive to attack you that I might not have the budget to do it.
Yep. And
so this is a very powerful tool when you think about it this way to accelerate your responses. Now, there's some considerations because you don't want to necessarily just act recklessly and quickly.
Yep.
You have to have some strategic thought to it. But the ideal state is to actually get to the point where you're disrupting them before they even have a chance to make a decision. This is very much an ideal state. It may take some time to get there, but if you get it to just in time, that's then your next goal. You always have to aspire to be the next step better. How do you shorten this loop? How do you get your incident response processes, your defender processes inside of the attacker one? So you want to really shorten that timeline. There's a couple different principles here. The first is you need to have full visibility into your own environment.
Absolutely.
You can't have a blind spot. If you have a blind spot, you're going to miss a signal, and the adversary can operate in that blind spot, and you don't know that they're on a SaaS app. You don't know what they're doing on your host. You don't know what they're doing on your network. You've got to have as much visibility as you can fed in. Now, of course, collection isn't detection. You have to do something with that data, but it's critical to have that full visibility so you don't have a known blind spot that they can work in. An identity is one of the current blind spots in a lot of organizations. They have great visibility at the network, but they don't have a lot of visibility at what's happening with their identities and their credentials. And that's a critical place where the adversaries are really operating in the defender blind spots today. So the next step here, and this is a principle that instantiates in a couple different ways. You need to reduce manual steps and manual errors. The more steps I have to physically take, I have to click on, I have to look at, I have to search for, the slower I am. And the more that I have manual input, manual operation, typing things, clicking on the right or wrong thing, the more that happens, the more opportunities there are for my errors, for me to make a judgment error. Now, I'm valuable as a human because I can make a strategic, thoughtful decision, but I'm not valuable in that I'm faster than a computer. Computers are faster than people, and we have to understand that. And so there's a couple keys that get you to the point where you're reducing those. First is you want your investigation tools integrated. That's critical.
Yep.
You don't want to have to go, do swivel chair analysis, as some people call it, and go from tool to tool to tool. And that just introduces a lot of manual steps, and that slows you down. It's a lot of opportunity for error. Was it machine number 867 or 876? There's a lot of things that could go wrong if those tools aren't integrated seamlessly.
And the reality is that approach would work. However, you will always be trailing behind the adversary.
Yeah, you'd get there, but you'd get there long after they acted and did the damage to your organization.
Exactly.
And so you want to get there as quick as possible. The next piece is humans are good at understanding things, but we're not necessarily good at seeing an anomaly in a large set of data. When you talk about a megabyte, a gigabyte, a terabyte, that's more than a human can comprehend in most cases, unless it's a photograph. But that's a lot of data when you start looking at computer logs. How do you know that this particular log was at an unusual time? It's very hard to do that, but you can have a computer do that, and these algorithms can detect those anomalies. And that's where the user and entity behavioral analytics, the UEBA, is so powerful because it can find normal and it can say, hey, here's some suspicious events. Now, I need a human to look at this to tell me if this was legitimate travel to Europe from America, or if this was actually potentially a compromised account. So you need a human to be able to do the investigation pieces, but spotting the anomaly is really best left to the computers quickly.
The other challenge is sometimes you don't even know what you're looking for. So you have this massive set of data, but unless or until you understand what to look for,
Where do you start?
where do you start?
Exactly.
Right? So, and that's the beauty of machine learning and these big data algorithms, if you will, where you can go and they can just look for patterns, right? And they
Yep.
can surface those patterns and that intelligence up to where you can actually leverage those in your threat detection chain.
Now, you may not be able to completely trust that this is always going to be a true positive. It may be a false
Yeah.
positive. It may be, the machine made a mistake, but that's great. You can tune it, and then you can teach it, and you can, and then get better results next time. So, and the next piece here is automating investigative tasks, because you don't want to have to go and search for all the different related logs. You want that to happen for you automatically. And as we mentioned in the last module with Defender, Windows Defender ATP, you have that ability to build that timeline very quickly, and so that you don't have to go and build it manually. It's something that's automatically done as soon as there's a suspicious event. And that allows an investigator to look and say, hey, now that I see this, I think I want to go down and look at other instances of this file. I want to see what email this came from. I want to go and look at all those things. And the more that that's automated, that allows the investigators to respond much more quickly and get to a decision faster than the adversary can move. And that's very, very powerful, and it helps reduce those manual steps and errors.
And really comes down to those 5 W's, right? Who, when, what,
How and why.
yeah.
And
why,
the more
yeah.
that you can answer those questions automatically, this is a symbiosis or a partnership between a human and a machine to be able to do this effectively. But the more that you can delegate to the machines, and the more that they can automatically come up with suggestions and conclusions, the easier it is for me to make a judgment on that than having to go ahead and do that research myself manually. And then, of course, depending on the volume of attacks that you see in your organization, there may be a long space between them. So the more that you can exercise your processes and go through an incident response exercise and test that, whether it's a tabletop exercise or a technical one, the better your folks are going to be at doing it. You need to make sure that they've got these skills that are fresh. And then, lastly, and I want to be very careful to point this out here, is you always have to be careful that you don't overdo anything. When you're talking about an adversary attacking your environment, you're talking about a human organization that's trying to make money or trying to achieve some sort of organizational and national security goal that comes from attacking you. You always have to be very thoughtful and careful that I may want to be able to respond and investigate quickly, but I might not necessarily want to kick them out quickly. You might want to take a moment, if you don't know anything about them or what they're after, to learn what are they trying to get to. Is it a particular design? Is it a particular piece of data? Because if you understand that, you're going to understand what they're likely to do next and where you should look at and which alerts are more interesting than others. So sometimes it's better to actually watch the adversary, see what they're trying to get to, and understand their goal. And that helps you respond to not only this attack, but the next attack better. Sometimes you don't want to just blindly kick them out. And so it's just something to consider as you go through in your threat detection, threat management processes.
So it's intelligently playing with the adversary.
Not necessarily playing with them, but learning. If I know they're after this design, I know they're going to go after this set of SQL database stores, because I know that's what they want. And so that's going to lead me to much better decisions than if I just kicked them out of the host immediately and not known where they're trying to get to. And so you want to have that balance, of course. Once you know what they're trying to do, you want to thwart them, you want to frustrate them, you want to make it hard. But if you don't know where they're getting to, you might miss a signal that hey, something's going on in SQL. Well, we're not looking at SQL, looking at these hosts. So you just have to have that balance in there.
Let's take a look at a typical real-life scenario. So here we have an attacker, right, very motivated to go and do some malicious things to this particular organization. And we have talked about, they may use a range of different techniques, so whether it's phishing, other sort of credential theft to get that first foot into the organization.
Yep.
Now, once they are there, they're going to move laterally, right? So this is where we talked about attacks such as pass the hash, pass the ticket, and other forms as to gain more and more privileges in that particular organization. And really their goal is to get to that domain dominance, which is either getting to the domain admin credentials in your organization, or maybe getting access to the global admin credentials associated with your cloud infrastructure.
Yeah.
Once they are there, they can go anywhere, right? So they can go here and do malicious things in the cloud for you, or do malicious things in your on-premises organization.
It's a shortcut to all their objectives, yep.
And this is where the difference in depth strategy comes into play, right? So we talked about all these capabilities, and now what we are looking at as to how you can use these capabilities collectively, integrated together to provide you with, again, more proactive detection capabilities, which can take you from detection to disruption.
Exactly. You don't want these blind spots. You want to make
Right.
sure that on your Windows clients, on your email, on your identities, whether it's in the cloud or on premise, within your data center infrastructure, your SaaS apps, you have this visibility. And that way you don't have the blind spots, because you need to be able to detect unusual stuff happening in all those spaces with anomaly detection and the like. But you also need to be able to investigate and go deeper that, hey, once I have this anomaly, whether it's automatically gathered to you or you need to search and pivot and find what else is going on in there, that's what's going to make you successful because your adversary can't operate in the blind spot. And like I said, one of the biggest blind spots organizations have right now is their identity. They don't have a lot of visibility into do they have anomalous logons, whether it's in the cloud or whether it's on premise. It's critical to get that visibility that I know what's happening at my identity layer, so I can do that alerting and I can do that investigation.
And really, it's the ability to go and be able to detect these threats at each and every stage of the kill chain, right? So whether it's the
Yes.
email which is coming in, so let's try to stop the threat at the very get-go.
If you can, best
if we
place to
can.
do it, yep.
Again, there's no silver bullet, so you want to have the defense in depth strategy to where, yes, if the attacker is able to get in, now you have capabilities to make it hard for the attacker to either move laterally in your organization or just raise the cost of that particular attack, right? By building these
Exactly.
controls. So we talked about security controls which are built into the operating system, right? So that's our approach of building security from the get-go into the operating system, right? We have done that with Windows 10. So whether it's leveraging credential guard as an example, which is attacker or adversaries are not going to be able to use those traditional attack vectors, pass the hash, pass the ticket, to move laterally, right? So we have essentially put a closer to those scenarios with Windows 10 capabilities. And if they are able to then move further into your organization, now you want visibility associated with identity behavior. Is this identity behaving abnormally? So going back to your point, attaching that identity context and continuously monitoring that identity as to what the baseline behavior of that particular user looks like. So you can, again, pick up those outliers and anomalies.
Yep.
Right? And then from there,
Yeah, assuming they're successful with that, maybe they get a hold of the credentials in some way. You then need to be able to track them, like, for example, in Cloud App Security, that, hey, these accounts were compromised over this period. I want to watch these accounts to see what access they have. You need to have that ability and that visibility.
Absolutely. Now, one other thing is, again, going back to this important context of the customer, again, every time I go and talk to a customer, they have some sort of SIM, and they're very, very particular about, hey, would I be able to consume all of this great intelligence into that single pane of glass? And absolutely, and that's our goal. That's, again, we have said it multiple times, that's a heavy investment area for us, again, to make sure we are providing for that connected experience in a heterogeneous environment. It's not about just Microsoft capabilities.
Exactly, and customers have invested, as you said, a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort in getting their SIM set up. And we want to make sure that we're feeding that mechanism, those processes that are built around it, and just enhancing those capabilities. And if you don't have a SIM, great. We can provide you that ability to do the investigation on our tools and platform. If you do have one, we can feed it in there and go through the processes you already have. It's really meant to help customers wherever they are on that journey so that they have that ability to be successful.
And really the goal here is to provide for that connected, actionable intelligence. That, hey, this is how it happened, this is where it happened, this is what the attacker was doing, this is where we caught it, and this is all the context so you can do efficient investigation, right? The goal is
Exactly.
not so much about, hey, here's all the raw data, and then we're going to send all that raw data into SIEM and go figure it out, right?
Yep.
So that's the value of the connected solutions, right, which
And
can
provide all
you
that
for that
context. Yep.
entire context around that incident.
Yep. And of course, the Azure Security Center is the last piece, that phenomenal set of threat detection capabilities built in Azure Security Center. A lot of them you just simply turn on. There's a couple of them that actually have an extra charge for because it takes a lot of storage and analytics for us to provide those threat detections. But there's a lot of them that, we can do these real quick, and it's just part of Azure. You just turn it on for your VMs and your other resources.
That's awesome. Now, at the same time, if you think about these capabilities across the kill chain, they are going to create sort of this actionable intelligence again along different stages in the kill chain, right? How do you bring it together, right? A lot of time our customers are asking, hey, you know what? I have limited resources, which is a common scenario across most of the organizations.
Yep.
How do I maximize my value across this connected intelligence?
Exactly.
Right? So think about services such as enterprise threat detection, which is our managed security service offering, where we can be that extension to your on-premises team, right? So that's a human aspect to it. And we can be that first line in defense who is consuming all of this intelligence coming from these multiple sources, connecting the dots together, maybe applying other machine learning, bringing in the threat intel from the Microsoft cloud, putting it all together to provide you not just with the entire context, but making sure you're getting all the true positives.
Exactly. And one of the reasons that we actually created this was we found that it was very difficult for customers to be able to attract and retain and hire and support analysts. Cybersecurity analysts are a rare talent set. And we found even rarer within that is cybersecurity analysts that are also very familiar with the Microsoft platform. And so that's what we've seen is we've actually seen customers use this service in two ways. One, they don't have a SOC, or they have a limited SOC capability, and they're essentially using us as a primary means of detection and response. The other is that we see very mature, very large customers that have a very large and capable SOC, and you know what? They want us to be the Microsoft experts. They want us looking at the Microsoft portion of their estate. They want us to understand the Active Directory and the Windows pieces and all that, work with their team, supplement their team so that their teams can focus on a lot of the other challenges that come with having threat detection across such a large enterprise. So we've seen customers use it in different ways, which is really interesting to me.
So it's not just about detection with this particular service. What you're saying is we have this deep relationship across different organizations within Microsoft, so whether it's operating system, whether it's malware research team, and other organizations, and that's the value that we are bringing back to the customer to say detection is one thing, but then you need to be able to effectively respond, and you need to be able to mitigate that particular situation.
Exactly.
So with this particular team, we walk with the customer throughout the life cycle, going from detection to response.
Yeah, and if it's a minor thing, we can work with them over the phone or email that, oh, this is how you do it, and this is the files you're looking for, and this is how, step by step. And for some of them, when it's a significant incident and it's, kind of that domain domination you mentioned earlier, where, we're going to need some experts on the ground. We have that incident response capability that customers can engage directly, or the enterprise threat detection folks can light up as well, so that customers get what they need to get that response going, to get that recovery going, and get back to good.
Mark, one more question. So, we talked about sort of detection-based approach. We detect something, we work with the customer to remediation, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Can the customer actually reach out to us and say, hey, you know what, I found something, I need some help?
Absolutely. So we have our, essentially phone support options, which is, we have a lot of security experts that are available over the phone from that perspective. And then we also have that on-site team. And the interesting thing that a lot of organizations don't realize is effectively our incident response services are on retainer to them if they have a Premier Support contract. Because
That's a great point.
and it just makes all of these things available. So if the customer wants to light that up, they want to have our full-time on-site team come in and do that, or if they want to get some phone support on an unusual security incident, they're absolutely welcome to call us up, and then essentially we're already on retainer to them for those services.
So that's really the reactive part of it, right? So let's focus for a little bit on the proactive part.
Yes.
So if you think about it, most of the organizations are doing some sort of vulnerability assessment, pen testing, and maybe other things on a periodic basis. Maybe
Yep.
they're doing it every 6 months or every year, whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that those organizations can do, or where is it that we can help them proactively go and take a comprehensive look at their environment and see if there are any APT or malicious actors in their environment?
So you mentioned pen tests, and one thing I want to be clear on is there's two questions that organizations really should be focusing on answering, which is one, am I vulnerable? Is there a way that someone could take over my environment? That's the potential. And the second question, that's where that's the pen testers and the penetration tests and similar activities, red teams for the larger organizations, that really answers that question, answers it well. The second question is, am I compromised now? Do I have an adversary with presence and control within my environment today? And that question is, we can take that same set of folks and expertise that do our incident responses in a reactive manner, then we have our ability to go scan the entire environment and identify, hey, look, you've got these types of things. So we can answer that question by bringing those same tools and techniques in a proactive manner. And it's not testing can they get in, it's have they gotten in. And it's a very powerful capability. A lot of customers really like that compromise assessment piece of what we call our PADS, or Persistent Adversary Detection Service offering.
So what I'm thinking, this is something that the customer should be doing on a periodic basis, right?
Yes.
Again, this is a baseline. Hey, am I compromised, right?
Yeah.
The fact that today you're healthy does not mean that tomorrow you're gonna be healthy, right? So it has to be part of that routine. So whether every 6 months our customers are leveraging this particular service to proactively look at their environment to make sure everything's healthy.
Yeah, we've seen a number of customers that take that exact same line reasoning that you mentioned, which is, I want to have you guys check me out every 6 months. And we've even seen some organizations use it as a business advantage. They say, you know what? You want to hire our X capability in our X firm because every 6 months we have the best team from Microsoft come through and do a check of our environment. We are constantly doing a health check of our environment to make sure we're in a good place, that we don't have nation-state adversaries or whatever you're worried about. And they've actually used this as a competitive advantage against the other organizations in their industry, which I thought was very insightful and very forward-thinking.
How about mergers and acquisitions?
Hey, if you want to check and see if you're going to be bringing some unwelcome visitors when you purchase a company and you're integrating their IT, another great opportunity to do this kind of hunt operation.
Especially before you connect all those identities together, right?
Yes, ideally, yes, yes, very much before.
So far we have talked about detection, right?
Yes.
And we have talked about all these different capabilities across the entire kill chain, providing you with very good visibility into what is going on in your environment and where the threats might be. Fair? So I call that detection now. We also talked about that there's a need to go from detection to disruption. So let's take a look at how we can help our customers go from detection to disruption. So here's the power of connected capabilities, and I'll give you an example. So, and we have talked about all of these different capabilities going from Office 365 ATP to Windows ATP to ATA. Think about a scenario. Let's say there's a USB drive which was plugged into a desktop, right? And the desktop was infected that way. It's very likely that Windows Advanced Threat Protection would detect that particular malicious behavior, right? Would report on it. So that's one thing. Yes, we went ahead and detected that. Now it's also possible that the same binary or the same malicious payload was received by few users via email.
Yeah, and it was only detected in one place.
So how do you connect it together to again get that comprehensive value back as an organization, right? So what we are doing is, when we go and detect something with Windows ATP, we're going to send a signal back to Office 365 ATP. We're going to say, you know what? This is the signature, whether it's a hash, other characteristics of that particular file based on our detection. We're going to send all that signal back to Office 365 ATP and say, go scan that particular tenant and see if any other users have received that particular malicious payload in the email.
Who else was part of this spear phishing campaign,
Right.
basically?
So it's very possible that there may be 3 users here who were
But
part
only
of
one
that.
of them clicked on it, executed, and got detected, and the other 2, it just hasn't been opened yet.
Exactly. So this service actually on the back end can go and scan the entire tenant and say, okay, well, there are 2 more users, right, who have received this particular malicious attachment. They haven't opened it up yet. Let's just go and remove that malicious attachment from their inbox.
Clean it up before they ever click on it.
So that's very powerful, right? Again, going back to enhancing the user experience, enhancing their productivity, we did all of that in the back end. And the only reason we are able to do that is by connecting these services together, right?
And that's where that integration, it shortens your OODA loop, and it also allows you to improve your business experience.
And that really allows you to go from the detection to disruption. And that's just one example, right? So we're going to continue to invest in sort of connecting more and more of our capabilities together because we believe that is the only way to go to disruption and making sure we can proactively stop those attackers before they become an issue in your environment.
Exactly. So in our next module, we'll be talking about server and Azure security and how those elements in the reference architecture can help you with your security strategy. Thank you.
Thank you.